thing that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is the Thursday edition of Point of View, and we're going to be spending some time in these next 2 hours looking at a number of issues. Of course, we'll talk about DOGE, we'll talk about debanking, as well as corporate wokeness and a variety of other topics. Next hour, we'll get into a very important question about how to reach out to the millennial generation. And so we're going to have all sorts of topics that I think you are going to appreciate as we cover some of this today. And so starting off here in studio with me today, our good friend Lathan Watts, who's the Vice President of Public Affairs for Alliance Defending Freedom. And in just a few minutes, we're going to get to some of the articles you've posted. But first of all, I thought we'd start with what is happening in Virginia. Now, Virginia used to be sort of a red state, then it sort of turned a little bit more purple. But more recently, the legislature in Virginia thought that they would put together a bill which passed and actually would make it very difficult for anybody that would stand outside of an abortion facility, because if you were holding a sign or trying to talk to someone, you could get thrown into jail. Now, Governor Glenn Youngkin looked at that and said, I'm going to veto that. But Lathan, just imagine that here you could actually be holding a sign or even wanting to talk to someone. That would put you in jail. It's almost like something we've talked about with before. If you were even praying quietly in front of an abortion clinic, you could be thrown in jail.
That's right. You don't have to imagine it if you live in the UK. And Alliance Defending Freedom has clients in the UK who have been arrested for simply standing on a sidewalk, a literal thought crime where the police officer asked them, "Are you praying?" And their response was, "Well, in my mind," and they were arrested. Like I said, I mean, it's a literal thought crime, and it's particularly ironic in the UK, the home of George Orwell and Aldous Huxley. But I say a lot of times when I get to talk to people about the work that ADF does, in particular our international work, the things that start in Europe don't stay there.
That's right.
And this is a perfect example.
This is not California, Illinois, New York. This is Virginia. Yes. Right.
So, and as you said, I mean, it's been, you would call it a competitive or a swing state. It's not, deep blue. It's competitive, and for something like this to make it through both houses of the legislature is shocking. Thankfully, Governor Youngkin vetoed it because I guess maybe he's the only one in Virginia who's read the First Amendment, but
and believes in free speech and recognizes the potential dangers of this and all the rest.
Yeah, I mean, one of our clients in the UK was was arrested. The sign that she was holding, all it said was, "I'm here to talk if you want to." Mm-hmm. And she was prosecuted under these statutes that they have over there. They call them like buffer zones or whatever. Yeah. Which theoretically are to keep people from harassing people coming in and out of abortion facilities. But standing there saying, "I'm here to talk if you want to," doesn't fit into any plausible, reasonable, or sane definition of harassment. One of our clients over there that was impacted by this, the day that the police officer asked her about it, the clinic wasn't even open that day.
Yes.
So there was no possibility of harassing anybody coming in or out of it because nobody was going in or out of it. She was literally standing there praying in her mind. So that's why we fight these things over there before they get here. And, had this, if there was a different governor and this bill looked like it was going to pass, we would have sued them the moment it was signed into law.
One of these things. ADF, call your office here. We, of course, are on the fourth day of our Truth Team Week with Colin Lambert. And Colin, one of the things we love about Lathan, he's got the best punchlines. And one of those is that he has said that, some of these individuals that read in 1984 don't understand that it's a dystopian novel threatening what could happen with a totalitarian government. Some of them read it thinking it's a how-to manual. And you will get a lot of great lines from Lathan today, especially especially in some of the articles we're going to be reading. But again, this is the fourth day of Truth Team Week, and we have a number of things we need to attend to right away.
Yeah, day 4. It's so important. We just have one day remaining after today. So big goal today, $40,000. We're already underway, $260 in, but it's going to mean everybody doing something. Gifts of every size at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. This is the only place that I'm aware of on Christian radio where you're going to hear some of the topics that you cover. There's a lot of stations that won't touch some of these topics. There's a lot of the media that won't touch these topics. But one of the great things about Point of View, you're going to hear the truth, you're going to hear the facts, and you're going to hear what the Bible says about it all. That is the value of Point of View. So encourage you right now to kick us off with some gifts, maybe 4 or 5 calls right now with your best gift at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
I think we're kind of urgent right now because we're down to the last 2 days, and if we're going to meet our goal, and you might remind us what the goal is, we need to actually have some people step up.
Yeah, big goal, $150,000. And to reach this goal for the week, we're going to need a lot of those gifts we've been seeing, those $10 and $20 and $30 gifts, $30 a month. We're not going to make that $150,000 goal without some leadership gifts as well. Maybe you could give $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, and you can spread that out over 12 months, by the way, whatever is easiest for you. It's going to take everybody giving their best gift today and tomorrow for us to get close to that $150,000. But it's so important. It's not for golden microphones. It's not for a jet for Kirby. It is to keep this program on the air on your radio station. So call or click right now, 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Let me set up what we're going to be talking about with Lathan right after the break, and that is the issue of debanking. Now, a while back, I read some people saying, well, that doesn't even exist. You're talking about a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. Well, you might want to talk to Nigel Farage, who was an individual involved with Brexit, who all of a sudden, all access to his banking services disappeared. Dr. Joseph Mercola, who was an individual that was speaking out about the vaccine, and all of a sudden, not only he, but all of the people in his family and people in his organization all of a sudden lost banking privileges. A while back on Joe Rogan, Mark Andreessen talked about at least 30 different tech company founders that had been debanked. And if that's not enough, Melania Trump herself said that when she wrote in her memoir, the longtime bank that she had closed the account and also refused to actually provide an account for her teenage son. So we're going to come back and talk about some positive things. Matter of fact, these next 2 stories from Lathan are victories, and we like to celebrate the victories. But for you to hear those, we certainly need to have you call right now because we have an opportunity for you to actually support this ministry and hear what we're going to talk about next.
It's a great time to call right now as we go to a break. You won't miss anything. Pick up that phone and call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net. Call in, click in. Let's hear from you right now, and let's get off to a good start on day 4 of Truth Team Week.
The clock is definitely running, and if people are saying, well, I thought I'd just wait till the end, put you over the top, well, today you can help us do so. Looking over there right now, and people are looking at their phones. I'd rather they were answering the phone, so perfect time for you to make that phone call as we go to a break. One last time, again, the theme this week is Anchored to Truth. 1-800-347-5151, the website, pointofview.net. You can find some of the articles we're going to talk about. You can also give online as well. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Many stories are surfacing about waste, fraud, and abuse, but there is one story that is being mentioned by numerous commentators. The Department of Justice has been investigating the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. This was created when Congress passed President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund was a $27 billion program within the Environmental Protection Agency and lauded as a first-of-its-kind program to address the climate crisis while revitalizing marginalized communities. Although it was to help people in communities that were historically left behind, very little of the money went to those communities. Instead, the money went to the bank accounts of environmental nonprofits with boards and staff that included Democratic donors and people with connections to the Obama and Biden administrations. Barry Wise described a free press investigation that concluded that most of the funds allocated were rushed out the door to 8 nonprofit groups after Biden lost the election, but before President Donald Trump took office. On my radio program, I recently talked about how a former EPA official admitted in a secretly recorded video that it was like they were tossing gold bars off the Titanic. Now, Katie Pavlich quotes the Washington Free Beacon story that DOJ discovered that $2 billion of those funds went to a nonprofit linked to perennial Georgia Democratic candidate Stacey Abrams. You know, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent concluded, "We all think there's waste, there is abuse. I think there may be real fraud here." Perhaps now you can understand why there has been such a rabid response to the DOJ investigation. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you just heard by visiting pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Point of View, keeping you anchored to truth.
Well, first of all, the Lord told us directly in the Scripture that it is better to give than to receive. And when you look at that at face value, I think most of us reject that thesis. Certainly in our culture, we think it's better to receive than to give. and the Lord completely turned that around. And yet when you look at all of the data, even the science, all the research, all the surveys indicate that scriptural claim or that scriptural promise, in fact, is true. So I'm excited to encourage people to give, particularly to give to Point of View. And as you know, my wife and I personally support your organization because we have a portfolio of investments we make in God's kingdom. And we've always said that we admire the work that you do. We admire the outcomes of that work and the multiplication and the young people that are growing and benefiting and being equipped to speak into the darkness of our culture. I just think it's a great return on investment.
Point of View, anchored to truth.
Chuck Brantley, CEO of Crown Financial Ministries, and an individual that's been on the program many times before. And as we point out so often, Colin, not only do we have guests on the program, but many of them are actually donors to the program as well.
I love to see that, and I love what Chuck mentioned about return on investment. That's one of the things I love about programs like Point of View. You can guarantee that as you give your gift, people's lives are going to be impacted by what happens here on Point of View. It's a guarantee. It happens all the time. We've already heard testimonies this week of how Point of View has affected people's lives. Liberty yesterday was one of those great examples, listening as a child, and now she's hosting the Know Why podcast for you and helping young adults and young parents learn how to teach their kids a Christian worldview and what they need to know about what's happening in the news. So think about what Point of View means to you. Think about what it means to maybe somebody that doesn't have access to it at the moment or can't give at the moment. You can help make up that difference. difference at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Might just mention that one of the articles we're going to be talking about right now was written by Lathan Watts. It's published by National Review, and unless you have a subscription, which I do, this one is actually in their banking and finance section. We have it so that you can read it in its entirety. And Lathan, I was just thinking about this book by Jonathan Turley. You know, he's an individual that may not necessarily agree with us politically, a professor at George Washington University, but here, The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in an Age of Rage. It relates to the previous one, but it also relates to this as well. This idea that if I don't like something you've said, I can just remove your banking privileges. And even though I've said that some people have tried to say this is a non-issue, I think we have lots of evidence that it indeed is a real problem.
It really is. We had a client in Memphis, Tennessee called Indigenous Advanced Ministries who deal primarily with widows and orphans in Uganda. And we're preparing for a big mission trip, and all of a sudden just found out their bank account had been closed with no real explanation. Also, a local church there in Memphis that supports the ministry, same thing, account closed, no explanation. Could not get an answer from the bank until attorneys got involved. The bank eventually settled on a very vague term of service that they use called reputational risk. Although, I'm not sure what risk to your reputation it would be to say you're helping out people that help widows and orphans in Uganda.
And Sam Brownback, who's been on this program many times before, National Committee for Religious Freedom. Well, there's one that's going to ruin your reputation, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, former governor, former senator.
Presidential candidate.
International ambassador for religious freedom during the first Trump term. And then after that started this nonprofit. And as I understand it, did not know that the bank account had been canceled until he went to deposit a donation in his account, and his account was closed. And same story, could not get an answer out of the bank. So last year, the state of Tennessee became the first state in the country to pass a law dealing with debanking. We worked with them to get that done, and proud of them. Idaho just passed a similar bill this week. I'm not sure if the governor signed it yet, but we expect him to. There's a similar bill pending here in Texas, also in South Carolina and West Virginia, I believe. So the states are starting to take action, which is good. The issue has come up at the federal level as well. President Trump has mentioned it in a couple of speeches and highlighted it. The issue came up during the Treasury Secretary's confirmation hearing.
Right.
Senator Tim Scott has held hearings about it. So I think the days of just being able to say, well, no, that doesn't happen are over. Yeah. And even though Chase, to this day, has never publicly admitted that they have debanked anyone.
J.P. Morgan Chase. Yeah, I know. It's just amazing. And Jamie Dimon has said that.
Yeah, exactly. Refuses to admit that it ever happens. But
here we go.
But we're making a change to our policies that make it very clear that we do not discriminate against customers, vendors, personnel, anyone on the basis of religious beliefs, political beliefs, or affiliations with, or free speech or affiliations with certain industries. All of the things that the long line of evidence points to have happened. There's now a policy change at Chase. So on one hand, thank you for doing the right thing. It was we were negotiating, sort of working with Chase on this because we had a shareholder resolution we were proposing to the shareholders to deal with this.
Right.
And apparently Chase really didn't want that resolution to come in front of the shareholders. So they agreed to make the policy changes. So we withdrew the shareholder resolution. Yes. So that's a big win for J.P. Morgan Chase.
Very significant.
If not the largest, one of the largest banks in the world. To make a significant policy change like that is a huge win, a huge step in the right direction. But as I pointed out in the article, if others like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and the other big banks don't follow suit, consumers need to have some sort of recourse, and there needs to be some transparency and accountability in the process, which is where these laws that are being considered, that's what they do. They provide transparency and and accountability in the process.
But again, I think, Cullen, this illustrates that many people would not know about this if, first of all, we didn't have Lathan in here talking about it. And second of all, a lot of this happens behind the scenes. Another one we're going to talk about after the break is another victory behind the scenes. Don't always have to go to court to win an issue, but whether you can win it in the court of public opinion or in a court that is a legal issue, this is, I think, just a great victory. And this issue of debanking might just be a footnote in history. That's good news.
It's great news, and you've said it. News you can't hear anywhere else. This is a perfect example. I listen. I'm a newsie, so I watch news all the time. I flip around to different networks just to see what they're talking about. You just do not hear stories like this, and it's so important that we know what's going on and that we know that organizations like ADF are making it possible to change some of those policies, and we love to see that. So again, if you want news that you can use, if you want news that you're not going to hear anywhere else, you need to help us keep Point of View on the air, and you can do that with your gift at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, pointofview.net. Just got a gift online from Mary in Savannah, Georgia, $100. Thank you for that. How about next person? Next person to call or click, now's a great time. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
You know, one of the things that Lathan oftentimes says, are you actually weary of winning yet? That was a question asked by, of course, Donald Trump. And he said, no, not yet. And we're going to talk about some more winning in just a minute. And that may be part of our problem. We're actually seeing some real significant difference. We've seen some victories at the Supreme Court level, both with First Liberty Institute and Alliance Defending Freedom. We're seeing this one as more of a cultural victory. We're going to talk about another one as a corporate victory. And that's all the more reason to celebrate, but it's also not the reason to step back and say, well, I guess everything's in good hands, because as we pointed out, we've got some major challenges on the future, don't we?
You know, there's also something to think about as we look at the situation across America with finances right now. And we've been through some up and down in the stock market. Some people are not sure what's happening with the tariffs that are coming. But I can tell you this. I know in talking to some of these folks like Chuck Bentley that we heard from just a few minutes ago, Rob West with Faith and Finance Live, and others, Ron Blue, they're going to tell you that when times are tough, that's not the time to be grasping with your fists onto everything you own. It's a time to lean into your opportunity to give and to support ministries that really are important during the good and the bad times, and that's a ministry like Point of View. Would you call or click right now at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net? We'd love to hear from you right now.
You want to hear about another victory? Well, stay tuned, and we will get into that in the corporate world. But again, as we go to a break, some of you might say, I don't want to miss all the great stories you're telling us, some of the victories. So perfect time to call right now. There's an extended time in which you can actually make that call. Anchored to Truth, 1-800-347-5151. If you want to see the two articles we're quoting from on the website, pointofview.net, and you can also click on and support us there. We'll be right back.
So, have you joined Point of View's Truth Team yet? There is only one day left for your generosity to have the biggest impact. This week, our goal is to raise $150,000, but we need to meet that deadline by tomorrow. When you join the Truth Team, you'll help people hear and build a biblical worldview. That means that when culture shifts and political tides change, they can stay anchored to God's truth. Your support means more Americans become equipped to live out their faith, becoming a light that leads others back to God. For over 50 years, Point of View has helped Americans restore biblical values in their lives and in their communities. Help future generations stay anchored to truth. Join the Truth Team right now before it's too late. You can join at pointofview.net or by calling 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kirby Anderson.
Back once again, it is the fourth day of our Truth Team Week. In studio with us, Lathan Watts, Colin Lambert. And Colin, of course, I want to get to another one of his great articles, another victory that we can talk about. But we are in the midst of Truth Team Week, and we certainly need to hear from some of our listeners.
Everybody. We'd love to hear from everybody. We're on 212 stations across the country, and we'd love to hear from every one of those. If you listen and you enjoy Point of View, if it ministers to you, to your family, to your kids and your grandkids, be a part of Truth Team Week. Only today and tomorrow remaining, so it's critical we hear from you at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
I thought before we get back to this particular issue, we would bring in the president of Point of View, and that's Warren Kelly. And so, Warren, how are we doing?
We're doing okay, and we appreciate the support that we get from each and every one of our listeners. I know some of them have been giving for many years, and we are very grateful for what you do to make it possible to bring truth and insight on the issues to the people across the nation. Kirby, can I tell a story real quick before we go? I love telling stories. You heard Lathan talking a few minutes ago about someone being arrested for standing on a sidewalk and praying in their mind. And you think, how could these kind of things happen? But I remember back in the late 80s when Marlon was a host, Kirby was co-hosting with him. And there was some good people down in South Texas that decided that all these people that were coming down and they were going to witness to people on the beach was going to run off all of their spring breakers and hurt their bottom line for their tourism. And so they passed a law that made it illegal to share your faith on the beach. It was the first, I believe, anti-proselytizing law passed in the country. And Marlon got on the air, and he actually called the mayor on air. And that conversation was very abrupt, kind of ended quickly when he realized what was going on. And so Marlon just gave the phone number for the mayor and several of the city council members, and the people responded and began to call. And lo and behold, in just a couple of days, they decided that ordinance was not a good idea and took it down. And there was another time just a few years later during the Clinton administration, they tried to do this on the national level. And again, Point of View is instrumental in striking that down. So there is such a broad range of areas where Point of View has had such a tremendous impact, and we've been doing it for 50 years. So please know that your support makes a huge difference. And even right now, it can make an even greater difference because I talked to a lovely young couple that has supported the ministry for a long time, and they have offered up a $5,000 matching challenge. But that's a today-only thing. So if you want to get your gift matched, please make a call right now. You can call us at 1-800-347-5151, or you can go online at pointofview.net and see your gift matched.
What a great opportunity to give with a $5,000 dollar-for-dollar match on the board. Let me remind you, if you've never given before, a wonderful time to get involved and give for the very first time, because your gift and your impact is going to be doubled. Maybe you've been giving before. You've been giving monthly. You could consider upping your monthly gift, maybe $5, $10, $20 a month. That would be doubled. Or maybe a one-time gift. Maybe you are a monthly giver. Could you give a one-time gift just during this Truth Team Week? That would be doubled as well. So again, up to $5,000, a dollar-for-dollar match. It starts right now at 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Let's make some of those phone calls. And are you ready for another victory? Let's talk about this one. Let me, first of all, hold up a book that came out a while back. Most people didn't know about this guy by the name of Vivek Ramaswamy when it first came out, called Woke Inc. But we have, over the years, noticed that a lot of these various companies and corporations have gone woke. So here is a Lathan Watts article, which you can read as well. Will Walmart be a leader in abandoning corporate wokeness? Another victory. Talk about that.
Yes, this is another one. You know, in the last segment we talked about Chase being one of the largest banks in the world. Walmart is among the largest corporations in the world. So any victory there has significant impact. And Walmart has announced that they are sort of stepping back from the DEI regime, I guess, that they had in place in their HR departments. And this is the reason that ADF decided to engage in corporate America. We defend, the right of free speech and religious liberty and sanctity of life, marriage and parental rights in courtrooms around the country and all over the world. But our founders wrote our Bill of Rights because they were, and they structured our government in the way they did because they were extremely suspicious of the concentration of power. Mm-hmm. And now, while the Constitution protects you from concentrated power in government, concentrated power in the private sector can be just as threatening to liberty. And when you look at, like we talked about the banks in the last segment, between Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, most Americans have their deposits there. I mean, it's in the trillions of dollars that these three banks control. Walmart is inevitable. I mean, they're like Thanos from from the Marvel universe. They are inevitable. They are everywhere. So when a company this big takes notice of not just, DEI is a bust. It doesn't work. And the examples are numerous of places that have implemented it. It has not resulted in all the promised results. It's ethically dubious, to be nice. It is legally, it can land you in court. And some of these corporations are now, I think, seeing the results of having tried to do this and stepping back. Walmart is one of the largest companies in the world to do so, and that's a big win.
Yeah. Well, and again, you talk about the cautionary tale that comes from Bud Light. I know this may not be a Bud Light audience, but also Disney, Target. You can go down a pretty long list of, if nothing else, Walmart and the corporate offices, which are in Arkansas, and certainly are not necessarily like some of those that are trying to be woke, have said, as I look around, this isn't not only questionable legally and morally, but it just doesn't exactly advance your brand very much, does it?
Well, and even beyond the brand, yes. I mean, the Bud Light example is one of the worst self-inflicted brand wounds I've ever seen in my lifetime. You talk about not knowing your audience, but Walmart and these companies that are starting to step back, I hope this is a trend of getting back to, like, what is the purpose of business? Your owners are your shareholders. And you look at what happened to Bud Light. They lost $2 billion in shareholder value because of that. And I think some of the other corporations, have seen this. They've seen what, the stock price at Target has done. Those are the people that own your company. And your number one responsibility, fiduciary duty as a corporation, is to your owners, the shareholders. So if it doesn't impact the bottom line in a positive way, why are you doing it? And that's sort of there's a new coalition, we're probably out of time, called the Good for Business Coalition, that is just recently launched, and it's about returning to business, getting back to business. And that you don't need to step into these on either side, frankly, of these controversial social issues.
Stay
because
out over there.
Why do I, as a consumer, care what Walmart thinks about who can get married in this country, or the availability of abortion, or all of these issues that we've seen these companies wade into to their detriment? And just sell me some golf clubs, Dick's Sporting Goods. I don't need to know what you think about XYZ issue. Just sell me what I came there for at a decent price and get some good ROI to your shareholders.
When we come back from the break, we'll talk about some of the behind-the-scenes material about that as well. But, Colin, we have a match on the table.
We do. A couple has come forward with a $5,000 dollar-for-dollar match. It is active right now, and you can be a part of it at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net counts as well. Priscilla in Georgia, your $50 is doubled, and Wayne in Arkansas, your $50 is doubled. We're grateful for you. Don't don't waste this time during this break. You're not going to miss anything. Just line up those phone calls, get online, and click on the button for pointofview.net. You'll see the big banner, Anchored to Truth. Click on that, and it's a form that just takes a couple of minutes. Or again, call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151.
When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about a letter that was sent to them by a number of the individuals that were financial officers, just a little bit behind the scenes, and another victory. You getting tired of winning? No, I think we have a couple other victories we might talk about as well. Perfect time to call, though. You won't miss anything. Just give us a call right now, 800-347-5151. Let's see if we can get 5 phone calls right now during the break, and we'll maybe have some more at the top of the hour. We have a $5,000 match on the table. Love to hear from you. www.pointofview.net or 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
Point of View, keeping you anchored to truth.
Hi, I'm Stephen Meyer of the Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture. There's nothing like Point of View Radio. It just doesn't talk about current affairs, nor does it talk just about the Christian faith. Instead, it helps Christians understand how to think about current developments in politics, in science, in culture, in light of a biblical worldview. It teaches people how to think Christianly about the events taking place all around them. And beyond that, Kirby Anderson is not just an exceptionally gifted broadcaster, but he's a highly educated scholar who has advanced degrees in science and political philosophy and his breadth of knowledge shows in nearly every interview he does. If you want to renew your mind and deepen your faith, Point of View is the broadcast for you.
Point of View, anchored to truth.
Stephen Meyer, Vice President at Discovery Institute, and he's probably best known for addressing many of these science issues. We'll be getting into too many of those this week, but again, those are topics we address here as well. But before we get back to Lathan Watts, we of course still have in studio with us Colin Lambert. You've been with us all week. Fourth day. I sense a bit of urgency if we want to make our goal, and given the fact we have a $5,000 match on the table, this is a perfect time to call.
Urgency is a good word, because we are in the day 4 of Truth Team Week, just another hour and 15 minutes, and then tomorrow's program 2 hours. So very, very critical in these final hours that anybody that's been waiting stops waiting and calls. And we've got this $5,000 dollar-for-dollar match on the board right now. Want to thank Karen in Arizona. She just stepped up to the plate with $200 a month. That's $2,400, which becomes a $4,800 gift as the match happens. And James in Arkansas with a $50 a month gift. That's $600, and that becomes $1,200. So that's awesome. So we have about $1,900 remaining on this dollar-for-dollar match. You can be a part of it right now at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Glad you mentioned the one from Arkansas, because you know where that is.
Good people come from Arkansas.
Give us behind the scenes for just a minute, because both of these come together with the fact that you have shareholder meetings. I have been to a shareholder meeting. It's a little bit on the boring side, but they also have resolutions, and that, I think, had an impact on the bank. It certainly had an impact indirectly on Walmart, because here, as I mentioned just a minute ago, you have this list of individuals, 38 financial officers from 28 states, who actually wrote a letter of commendation to Walmart, and it illustrates that there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes that you quite frankly wouldn't know about if you weren't reading your articles or listening to Point of View.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The State Financial Officers Foundation sent a letter to Walmart commending them on stepping back from DEI, and some other prominent investors joined that letter as well. Investors that hold millions of dollars in Walmart stock. So them chiming in, encouraging Walmart, because when Walmart announced this, of course, the usual suspects came out and said, all the things the usual suspects usually say, trying to get Walmart to
reverse themselves.
To reverse themselves.
Yes.
And so it's important, especially like the State Financial Officers Foundation, because these folks in the states where they're in office, a lot of them control the state's investments. So state pension funds and all of those things are invested in different funds and different stocks, and these are the officers that control that. And so they're controlling a lot of shares of stock in some of these companies, and you combine that with the investor groups that control a lot of shares, them encouraging Walmart, you're doing the right thing, keep at it. That's a huge. It can make a huge impact to encourage them to keep doing the right thing. Doing the right thing is seldom easy. In this case, I believe it is actually good for your bottom line, and these folks are encouraging them, saying, yes, it is.
Again, biggest bank, or one of the biggest banks, and changing a policy. One of the biggest corporations changing your policy. And Colin Lambert, how would they know about that unless they had read these articles or listened to Point of View?
Well, it's one of the things I love about Point of View. Not only are you going to hear some of these stories and get access to things you wouldn't hear about in the news, but the tools and resources for you are on the website every day. So if you missed it, you just caught a little bit of what Kirby said or what Lathan said, hey, go to the website. You're going to find the articles that we've been talking about, and you can download them. You can use them in your own conversations with people. It's part of your own education. And again, even for your family, maybe you're a homeschooling family, you have the opportunity to use it with your kids as well. So I want to encourage you, again, we're in the middle of a $5,000 dollar for for dollar match right now. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Let me encourage you to make that phone call, especially as we're coming to a break. But I thought I would be remiss with Lathan here if I didn't at least point out that as of last week, and I know the number is even higher, 160 lawsuits against the Trump administration. I don't always use the word unprecedented. I think that gets overused, but this is unprecedented. We have never, you are a scholar. He's got a history background, Colin, as well as his legal background. He knows the presidency and he knows this country. I have never seen anything like this. Have you either?
It's, it's hard to anymore. Like you said, I mean, the word unprecedented gets overused, but I think it is a symptom of maybe a bigger problem. And that is that people and frankly, sometimes on both sides of the political aisle, turn to the judicial branch when they cannot accomplish what they want to do through the legislative branch or the executive branch. And it is sort of the weaponization of the judicial branch trying to, if you're in the minority, stop what the majority is doing in the legislative and the executive branch. It is, honestly, it's a feature, not a bug of the system. It may be that it's more apparent to us now. I think this sort of thing has gone on for a long time. It may be reaching a point that we haven't seen in a while, but it's I think it's symptomatic of either the inability or the unwillingness to fight it out in the political branches where it should be debated and passed and signed into law. And that's why we have elections. The judiciary are not elected for a reason. The founders wanted to sort of insulate them from popular opinion because popular opinion can sometimes conflict with the Constitution. And if that's the case, it's the judiciary's job to say no.
Yes.
And they shouldn't have to worry about getting reelected when they do it. The flip side of that is, as I said before, some people turn to the courts to try to accomplish what they can't accomplish through the normal electoral process.
Yeah. Next hour, we're going to talk about an article, Make Congress Do Its Job. I think the court's going to say, you need to do your job and stop dumping it over on us. It has to do with the FCC, and I put that one in there because, of course, Colin knows a lot about the FCC and radio. We'll talk about that. And, of course, we'll be talking in just a few minutes with Jonathan Teague about what can the church do to reach the millennial generation. But before we take a break, let's remind everybody that we have a match on the table and we have a real need to hear from our listeners.
We have matching dollars available right now up to $1,325 remaining in this dollar-for-dollar match. Thank you to Darlene in South Carolina, Sylvia in Alabama, Janie in Georgia, and Lorna in Illinois. All of your gifts have just been doubled. And again, $1,325 to double your gift. You can get involved right now at 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net. If you've never given before, it's a great time to give right now because your first gift will be doubled. It will double your impact. Maybe you're giving monthly. You might consider increasing your gift or giving a one-time gift on top of that. Again, those will be doubled right now. 800-347-5151.
We'll take a break, but Lathan, first of all, thank you. And, of course, as some Supreme Court decisions come down and other things, we'll be calling on you again.
I'll be happy to be here. We've got 3 at the court right now and potentially a 4th in the fall.
So you'll be hearing from him soon, but we want to hear from you right now. 800-347-5151. And, of course, pointofview.net will give you a total right after this.
So, have you joined Point of View's Truth Team yet? There is only one day left for your generosity to have the biggest impact. This week, our goal is to raise $150,000, but we need to meet that deadline by tomorrow. When you join the Truth Team, you'll help people hear and build a biblical worldview. That means that when culture shifts and political tides change, they can stay anchored to God's truth. Your support means more Americans become equipped to live out their faith, becoming a light that leads others back to God. For over 50 years, Point of View has helped Americans restore biblical values in their lives and in their communities. Help future generations stay anchored to truth. Join the Truth Team right now before it's too late. You can join at pointofview.net. or by calling 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
Thank you, Kirby. I really appreciate your program. You cover a lot of issues that a lot of us think about, I'm sure. And this is the first time I've ever called in, so I appreciate your input, too.
Oh, I thank God for what you're doing on Point of View. You guys have more influence across this country than I believe any of them in terms of tackling the issues and getting the truth out to Americans. It's getting to the point where truth just is bottled up on every hand. Every time you turn around, there's another big bottleneck against truth. I hope your listeners realize what Point of View is doing and supports Point of View in every possible way you can.
You know, I can't go to Washington. I can't do those things. So the only way that I can help is the way that God has provided for me, and to give some of that back to you guys. So, like you said, partnering with Point of View, because, you know, you can't do it alone. Thank you very much for what you guys do. Believe me, it's a needed thing, and I just hope everybody certainly would get on the bandwagon with you.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
Second hour today, let's see if we can talk about something else that has begun to be a very significant problem, really a chronic problem. And as the editors of the Wall Street Journal put it, Congress is supposed to write the laws, but these days it often prefers to delegate to the executive branch and then cheer or boo the results. I've mentioned this many times before when naively years ago I thought, I'm going to sit down and try to read through the Affordable Care Act, oftentimes referred to as Obamacare. And I wasn't into it for more than a couple of pages before I realized so many times the phrase, "as the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall determine." And I realized Congress just said, here, we're going to give you some money and we're going to tell you to fix it. And these individuals who were unelected, and of course, lots of people are unelected. All cabinet offices are unelected. Anybody in the administrative state is unelected. Even members of the federal judiciary are unelected. But sometimes unelected and unaccountable are individuals making very significant decisions. Well, it turns out that there was a law that was passed a number of years ago, which was dealing with the Federal Communications Commission. The FCC governs radio, television, all the telephones and things like that. And Congress basically just gave some vague principles to the FCC about rates and all sorts of issues and left everything up to the bureaucracy. And as a result, the government's brief said, well, delegation is constitutionally fine as long as Congress supplies an intelligible principle to guide the agency. The people challenging this are saying, wait a minute, this is where we've just delegated everything to these unelected and unaccountable members of the administrative state. By the way, I'm going to point out in just a minute that even the creation of the FCC has gotten so much larger and has spent so much more money than was ever anticipated. So this is a case before the Supreme Court. But the bigger issue isn't just the FCC or even the Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, or whatever it might be. It is the tendency which is getting out of hand, in which Congress will pass kind of a general law and then leave everything on doorstep of the administrative state, or what's sometimes referred to as the swamp or the deep state. And that has got to be changing. And in just a minute, I'll give you some illustrations of why that has to change and why maybe there's such a pushback right now over DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, because in some respects, they're pointing out when individuals don't have to run for re-election, when individuals don't really have to be accountable to anybody, the kinds of mischief that is done behind the scenes. So we'll get into that in just a minute. But we are in our fourth day of Truth Team Week. Colin Lambert in studio. We have a match on the table, and I thought maybe you'd give us an update on how we're doing.
Yeah, we have this 1 hour today and 2 hours tomorrow, so time is running out. If you're a procrastinator like I find myself being, it's time to get involved, and we do have a match on the board. It started out as a $5,000 dollar-for-dollar match. We're down to $825, so any gift right now up to $825 can be doubled dollar for dollar as you give your gift. $825 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Also counts as you click in online at pointofview.net. No waiting there. You can get right through. It just takes a couple of minutes. Clifton in North Carolina called with a $100 gift, and Carol in Illinois called with a $400 gift. Both of those were doubled, and we're grateful for that. Again, as you think about who to give to and where those extra dollars might go, we encourage you always to give to your church first. But I know if Point of View has ministered to you, it is a biblical principle that you minister back to organizations, ministries, pastors that have impacted your life. If Kirby and Point of View have impacted your life, this is the week really where we encourage you to give back, and we need to hear from everybody. Maybe you've never given before. This would be a great time to start. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
We had some other people volunteer here to be volunteers and takes those phone calls. I walked into an office and there was somebody on the phone, didn't even know they were there. So the good news is you shouldn't have any problem getting through. If by chance you do get a busy signal, just wait and call right back, because we really do not want to leave $5,000 on the table. There's no reason we should do that whatsoever. And so that, I think, is one of the good reasons why you should give us a call, 800-347-5151. Or let me just recommend for those of you that are near a computer, you can just go to pointofview.net. One of the things you'll notice, I'm holding this up. I don't think we've held it up before. Here is the bookmark that we will be giving to everyone. And so those of you that donate anything will receive that for sure. If you are wanting to donate on a monthly basis, again, Cullen, there is the Outlook magazine. Those that join with us at $1 a day, $30 or more or month, and they can be a lot more than $1 a day, then they'll receive also, of course, the booklets, and you're holding that up right now. But I also thought I'd just at least mention that at other levels, and you can read about those on the website, for $50 or more per month, you'll receive the wood Point of View coaster set. For $100 or more a month, the Igloo cooler. There are all sorts of great prizes and gifts and things we want to give to you, because we want to say thank you. And I know that you don't give to get, but we certainly want to say thank you for your support.
So many reasons to give to Point of View. And again, if you have been blessed by the ministry of Point of View, if it has educated you, your kids, your grandkids, your community, if you have learned things that maybe you're not going to learn anywhere else, because we know that there's news on Point of View that you're not going to hear anywhere else, and guests that Kirby's going to have on that you're not going to see anywhere else, I encourage you to get involved with this right now. While we still have some dollars left on this dollar for dollar match, get in on that. If you've never given before, we had a gentleman a couple of days ago. He said, I've been listening for years. I've never given. I'm going to give for the very first time. If you've never given, it's not a shaming thing. It's a, hey, get involved now while there's matching dollars available. And again, over 200 stations carry Point of View. Maybe we haven't heard from your station yet. We'd love to hear from you. Be a part of Truth Team Week right now at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Just a minute, we'll be hearing from our good friend, Dr. Jonathan Teague. He's been on the program many times before, senior associate pastor, but I did want to mention that he'll be with us as we'll talk about, and we've actually posted the transcript of the interview we did with Dr. James Dobson a while back on how can the church reach the millennial generation, get his thoughts about where we are in that process, and certainly he's been part of our Millennial Roundtable. One more reason to give, because we want to do what we can to reach the next generation, Generation Y, Generation Z. Now they're starting to talk about Generation Alpha. So again, this is the perfect time to call. Don't want to miss anything that we might hear from Jonathan Teague or some other things. A little bit later, I'm going to talk about zombie programs in the government, and that is another reason why people said we needed a Doge. So all those things coming up, but right now is a perfect time to give us that phone call, 800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. If you want to find the articles we're talking about, links to the individuals we have been interviewing, all of that is available at the website. And then you can just scroll down and go to the banner that says Anchored to Truth. Join now. Again, we'd love to hear from you. 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Many stories are surfacing about waste, fraud, and abuse, but there is one story that is being mentioned by numerous commentators. The Department of Justice has been investigating the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. This was created when Congress passed President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund was a $27 billion program within the Environmental Protection Agency and lauded as a first-of-its-kind program to address the climate crisis while revitalizing marginalized communities. Although it was to help people in communities that were historically left behind, very little of the money went to those communities. Instead, the money went to the bank accounts of environmental nonprofits with boards and staff that included Democratic donors and people with connections to the Obama and Biden administrations. Barry Wise described a free press investigation that concluded that most of the funds allocated were rushed out the door to 8 nonprofit groups after Biden lost the election, but before President Donald Trump took office. On my radio program, I recently talked about how a former EPA official admitted in a secretly recorded video that it was like they were tossing gold bars off the Titanic. Now, Katie Pavlich quotes the Washington Free Beacon story that DOJ discovered that $2 billion of those funds went to a nonprofit linked to perennial Georgia Democratic candidate Stacey Abrams. You know, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent concluded, "We all think there's waste, there is abuse. I think there may be real fraud here." Perhaps now you can understand why there has been such a rabid response to the DOJ investigation. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you just heard by visiting pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Point of View, keeping you anchored to truth.
Look, it would take me all day to summarize all the things that Point of View has done to help us at least have a chance in this battle. There aren't many outlets left, unfortunately, but Point of View is right up there with the creme de la creme of the ones that still exist, of telling the people that tune into your show the information they need if they're going to be good, responsible citizens and be able to cut their way through all the lies that are being promoted by the left. So I urge any listener that has followed me, has been a supporter of my work, this month certainly, to take those funds and support your work, Kirby, and support Point of View. I love what you do. I can't imagine how I would have won some of the battles I won without the support that you gave me on Point of View, and I hope it continues to grow and is well-funded so you don't have to waste much time doing this, and you can spend all of it telling the truth about faith, family, and freedom.
Point of View, anchored to truth.
Good friend Gary Bauer, again, has oftentimes the eyes and ears for us in Washington, D.C., but reminding us that some of the battles that he's won come all the way back to Point of View. We've already talked about the attempt to pass an anti-proselytizing law, and we've talked about the last couple of days about attempts to try to shut down homeschooling, and there are many victories we can talk about. But most importantly, Colin Lambert in studio with us. We need to talk about the fact that we still have a match on the table, and we're waiting for a few more phone calls.
Got a number of gifts that just came in. Mary Jo in South Carolina, $500. Patricia in California, Brian in Nevada, and Christy in South Carolina all got their gifts just doubled, and that just took care of our $5,000 for dollar match. I want to take just a quick moment. Warren, when he came in and announced the match, he said we have a young couple that was wanting to encourage others to give. So first of all, we want to thank that young couple that said they wanted to spur others to good works, and that's what they've done, because $5,000 was added to that, so a total of $10,000 in that effort. You see how quickly that helps move us along? Maybe you have a gift that could be used as a matching challenge today or tomorrow. We'd love to hear from you. $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. You see how quickly it helps us move down the line. Would love to see that. 800-347-5151. We know not everybody's able to give a gift that size, but if you have some extra right now, you have something you can donate to be part of this effort in the next day and a half, we'd love to hear from you. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Again, we thank that couple. We also certainly thank those of you that have called in, and so appreciate that. But if you're on the sidelines and watching, we would love to be able to, first of all, get your phone call and thank you as well. And also, the other day, we spent some time, and we will again, thanking the radio stations that make this possible. Heard from 2 general managers yesterday. We'll hear from some more in the future. But let's, if we can, get to one of the topics we wanted to address. An individual that you certainly have heard on this program many times, Dr. Jonathan Teague. He's the Senior Associate Pastor of Prestonwood Baptist Church. Also provides leadership to what's called the Prestonwood Network, which is a network of different pastors around the country. Has his master's degree from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, his doctorate from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. And I thought I would post, actually this comes from the interview he did a while back with Dr. James Dobson on how can the church reach the millennial generation. We have the entire transcript of the 2 days in which he did the interview. So, Jonathan, welcome back to Point of View.
Thank you, Kirby. Always a joy to be with you.
Let's talk about the millennial generation. We have these last few days had a chance to hear from Chelsea. We've heard from Liberty. We have some of the younger voices out there, and you have certainly had a real emphasis, both at your church and in your own personal ministry, to reach out to this generation, and that is certainly one of the things we talk about so often here on Point of View.
Yeah, you do, Kirby, and I always want to make sure to acknowledge to your audience how effective you are on a daily basis, and I think it's really significant that you're doing it daily. So many of the resources that you and your team bring to the table and to the conversation every day to help people really form their worldview around what the lens of the Scripture says to us as believers, and this is certainly significant for us, particularly for those of us that are endeavoring to try to speak into the younger generations of the church, both millennials and now, Gen Z, and the alphas that are coming as well. We've got 3 what you could call young generations that are going to be entering the radius of impact for local churches all over the world, and certainly here domestically in the United States. So, as you said, what we do with church planting and developing young leaders through Prestonwood and churches like it, we're really attempting to ensure that we've done all we can, as our pastor, Dr. Graham, says all the time. We want to be excellent in helping young people see the truth of the gospel and the value of the local church, and the fact that that value hasn't faded or changed over 2 millennia. In fact, some are saying, Kirby, we might very well be on the precipice of a national, maybe even worldwide revival, and it's coming. It's being driven through young people today.
Let's talk about that for just a minute, because from time to time we do report that, and who would have guessed if you had told me a couple of years ago that we'd be talking about a student revival at Asbury College or some of these other places where these have broken out, or that there are many people that have seen the movie, The Jesus Revolution, and said what happened in the 60s and 70s maybe can happen again in the 2020s and 2030s. So what about that? Because it does seem to me that there are some signs for hope, aren't there?
Well, there are. In fact, a dear friend of mine, Kirby, for many years, is actually on staff at Asbury. And when all that was happening, we were texting and communicating in those early days about what he was seeing in real time. And it was chapels on campus there and campuses all over the country. Students were just spontaneously showing up and they were meeting the Lord in prayer and worship, not for a little while or hours, but days and weeks. And now you see things like what Jenny Allen just did with the Gather event all over the world.
Yes.
Got the chance to talk with Jenny about that and hear her heart. It was unbelievable, and just getting people participating in that. So, I mean, Kirby, we're seeing it. We're seeing what, yes, the Jesus Revolution was some 50 years ago, where the Lord was just bringing revival and renewal in the hearts of young people. This has been the way of the church for centuries. It's younger people that have seemed to always lead the way. And so we're seeing this. We're seeing it with our friend Shane Pruitt and what's happening in the revival happening through evangelistic preaching and folks coming into ministry and calling out the called. So, Kirby, I'm really hopeful. And I think, ministries like yours and platforms like yours, they are so critical to creating a foundation, a buttress, if you will, of longstanding truths and faith and belief that are timeless for every generation. So, what you are doing, it's making a difference, and particularly for younger people that need to know these important aspects of a biblical worldview.
I just mentioned that after the break, one of the things I want to do is talk with Jonathan Teague, because they've had a number of pregnancy centers that have been associated with Prestonwood. They just had the grand opening of another one. And you're right, holding on to that little booklet that we've been making available on chemical abortion. So that's another great story and a success as well. But since we're coming to the bottom of the hour, I know some people don't want to miss anything that Jonathan might say. They would certainly want to continue to listen, and so this is a perfect time for a phone call. And I want to come back and talk a little bit more about the pro-life issue and some of the other things churches can do, but we still have an opportunity for people to help us meet our goal.
We do, and some folks are doing it right now. Anita in South Carolina, thank you for your gift. Francis in Georgia, Rebecca in Ohio, and Deb in Michigan. Grateful for each and every one of those calls and clicks. So important right now. Again, the final moments of day 4 of Truth Team Week, and then tomorrow is it. We're under the $100,000 mark. We were shooting for $150,000 this week. We're down to $92,320 to go. So here's what we'd like to see in the next half hour, if at all possible. 3 people who could give a gift of $1,000 or more. That could be that $100 a month gift. That's a great way to give a gift of that size. We'd love to see about 5 to 10 people give $1 a day gifts. You could do that at $360 one-time gift, or you can do that spread out over 12 months at about $30 a month. So everybody doing something, every different size gift is important, but now's the time, because we're running out of that. That's something we can't stop. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Day 4, and of course we'll have just a little bit more of the last half hour when we come back, and then tomorrow is it. And so where we are at that point is where we will be. And so if you can help us, that is certainly one thing we would appreciate. As I've held it up before, here's the bookmark that comes to everyone. So no matter what your gift is, you'll receive that. But if indeed you want to give on a monthly basis, we want to send you the Outlook magazine. If you can join with us as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, that allows you to not only get the Outlook magazine, but the booklets, and of course some of the other benefits that are there as well. So let's, as we go to a break, encourage your phone call. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. We'll be back right after this.
So, have you joined Point of View's Truth Team yet? There is only one day left for your generosity to have the biggest impact. This week, our goal is to raise $150,000, but we need to meet that deadline by tomorrow. When you join the Truth Team, you'll help people hear and build a biblical worldview. That means that when culture shifts and political tides change, they can stay anchored to God's truth. Your support means more Americans become equipped to live out their faith, becoming a light that leads others back to God. For over 50 years, Point of View has helped Americans restore biblical values in their lives and in their communities. Help future generations stay anchored to truth. Join the Truth Team right now before it's too late. You can join at pointofview.net or by calling 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net, and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kirby Anderson.
As I've said before, we're excited to hear from you, and certainly there is room for those of you that have been listening so far and would like to join with us. 800-347-5151. Going to continue our conversation in just a minute with Dr. Jonathan Teague, but Colin Lambert in studio, and I always like to see how we're doing as we go along.
Yeah, just got a call from Patricia in South Carolina with a gift of $10 a month. We appreciate that. Just a quick reminder that we've got one of these wonderful bookmarks for everybody that gives a gift. It's our thank you to you. And then, of course, the monthly booklets, if you're giving at $30 a month or more, the Outlook magazine, along with the booklets on so many different topics from a biblical perspective. Those are our gift to you. We've got the wooden coaster set if you're giving at $50 a month or more, and the wonderful cooler, the Igloo cooler, for gifts of $100 a month or more. We'd love to see at least 3 people give one of those gifts of $100 or more in the next coming moments. We've got about 25 minutes left in the hour. Would love to see several, maybe 5, 6 people give $1 a day. That could be a one-time gift of $360, could be $30 a month, whatever works best for you. This gift that we're asking you to give right now helps keep Point of View on your radio station. If you want to continue to see Point of View there, we need to hear from you. We're in the final day and a half of Truth Team Week. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
You know, we've been talking about pro-life issues this week, and we talked about the abortion issue yesterday, in particular, the idea of the abortion pill and then the chemical abortion booklet that we've actually put together and that Liberty has written. And Jonathan, I thought we'd come back to you because your pastor, Pastor Jack Graham, and you, Jonathan, and other staff have certainly been at the forefront of standing for life. But I know just the other day that in addition to the other pregnancy centers that your church has established, you had a grand opening of the Prestonwood Pregnancy Center Southwest.
We did, Kirby. It was a great day yesterday out on the campus of Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, special place for Dr. Graham and myself and countless other alumni that have come through that place over the years. And the Lord opened up an incredible opportunity for us over the last many months to be able to partner with them in an existing facility that we've been able to come in and redemptively kind of renovate and turn into a full-blown pregnancy center. It's the 3rd physical location in our footprint of Prestonwood Pregnancy Centers, along with a mobile unit that is out in the community on a regular basis. And I'm so thankful for our executive director, Leanne Jameson, and her incredible team, many of whom, by the way, are young millennial women and Gen Z women who love that ministry, have a passion for that space. And, it just, again, Kirby, to your point, it coalesces into this larger discussion about how do we impact the younger generations in the culture. And it begins by saying, if we're going to be a people of love, if we're going to go the way of Jesus as believers, as disciples of Jesus, that it's not enough for us simply to call on his name, which we should and we do, but it's also we need to be marked by the virtues of his kingdom. And when that takes place, when individuals and families and churches live in alignment with the standards of God's kingdom and they live it out authentically, it is magnetic to an increasingly growing sentiment in those younger generations that life is hopeless, that the future is cloudy and uncertain and scary, that loneliness, depression, anxiety are my only alternatives, that relationships are scary and commitment is unfulfilling. Well, all those things, the gospel runs counter to all those things. And when you get proactive in a space like this, Kirby, and you've led the way for so many years in your broadcast and your ministry and standing for life and speaking to what the biblical narrative is around being an image bearer, Psalm 139, you are always so consistent in that space. That's why what you do is so vital. And I just think things like that ministry and what you do, Kirby, they're fundamental to help showing the next generation of believers and future believers what the kingdom of God really is supposed to be all about.
Let's just, if we can, for just a minute, hear from some of our listeners who appreciate what we actually try to cover every single day here on Point of View.
Point of View, keeping you anchored to truth.
I was actually riding down the road. I drive a lot, and I heard y'all on your truth, trying to get truth partners. And God moved on my heart, and I just felt compelled to give y'all a call and to donate because I thought, well, why haven't I before? I mean, that's what came to my mind. Why haven't I before? As long as I have been listening, I should give. And so I did.
Going through the stations and caught Kirby in a very interesting topic. So just listening to it, and so just by hearing the topic, I can relate to some of those topics. But it has impacted my life a lot. I enjoy listening to the station.
I just wanted to commend you for the excellent guests that you've had on your program. I think all Americans need to hear these things, and I hear you say that only 1% of listeners support your program, and I just want to encourage people out there. They need to support your program because our country needs to hear these messages.
Point of view, anchored to truth.
You know, Colin, we've heard that 1% figure, and it may not even be 1%, but nevertheless, for just a few minutes, we might even encourage some of those people that are part of that 99% been listening, learn from this, and certainly have benefited from the broadcast that we have provided for more than 50 years. And if we can hear from them, even a first-time gift would be just a great encouragement to us.
You know, and it's not anything related to guilt or shame. It's truly about thinking about where do you give your money. You know, there have been many people, I don't know who gets the credit for the original quote, but look at someone's pocketbook and you'll see what they really care about. And that's the truth. And we all make choices about where we give. We encourage you to give to your church first because that's the basis of our Christian faith is our local church body. But if you're able to give anything above and beyond that, and you are benefiting from the work of Point of View on a daily basis, if your life is impacted, as you just heard those callers, by Kirby Anderson every day and the incredible guests that he has on day in and day out and the amazing things that he puts online in the form of tools and resources and action points, if you have been blessed, this is your time to bless back. It is biblical, and it is something we encourage you to do. If you've never given before, think about it. Pray about it, and then call and give your gift. 800-347-5151.
Just before I let you go, Jonathan Teague, I want to maybe get your thoughts about how an organization like Point of View can work within the church, because obviously there are topics that we address here that are never going to be addressed in the pulpit from you or Jack Graham or anybody else. Artificial intelligence or critical race theory, sometimes it gets a mention from the pulpit, but it does seem to me that this is a place where we can joint venture and partner with the local church, and I'd love to get your thoughts about that as a pastor of a local church.
Well, Kirby, you're absolutely right. And, you know, one of the things we've discussed this before, as we see the biblical literacy and the spiritual familiarity of the culture decrease, that's an opportunity. It's not a crisis. It's actually a wonderful, wonderful opportunity that the Lord's given us, where we can meet people where they are and then begin to just teach them the value of a biblical worldview and what it means to have a Christ-centered life. And what you do and how you do it with such a robust consistency is so critical. I would say to every pastor in every local church, you ought to access and engage with this ministry, the resources that's available online, the daily program that Kirby offers. I know it ministers to me personally and so many to our church at Prestonwood, but countless others that ought to access what you do, Kirby, because I think the Lord has positioned you at a unique time in the culture to be able to provide so much resource on so many topics with such regular consistency. And it's such a blessing, Kirby, for your listening audience and future listeners to engage in what you're doing. So yes, local church pastors listening, local churches, you need to partner with this ministry. Download the resources, access the materials, because it will help you in the disciple-making rhythms of your church on a weekly basis and an annual basis as well.
And again, we just talked about, of course, churches having access to those resources. Yesterday, we made available a chance for people to download the chemical abortion booklet automatically, free of charge. But also, those are resources that would be helpful for pastors and others. And so, just a great partnership that we've had here. But just before we take a break, Colin, let's again talk about the fact that we are trying to meet a goal today, and we haven't really mentioned that too much either.
Our goal for today is $40,000. We are $26,000 away from that. As you can see, with a short time left, it's going to take people giving gifts of all different sizes. Folks like Mike in Arizona at $20 a month. Stephanie in Georgia gave a $100 gift. Scarlett in Georgia gave a $500 gift. We're grateful for all of those, and we encourage you to join the team. Join Truth Team this week. 800-347-5151. pointofview.com. prestonwood.net.
Jonathan, let me just mention that we do have a link to Prestonwood in case anybody would like to have you come and speak or like to interact with you or find out more about the Prestonwood Network. Because, again, we also have posted the great material that was available when you were on with Dr. James Dobson on the millennial generation. So that's on our website. And as always, we appreciate you being with us today.
Well, Kirby, thank you. And you know what a blessing you are. And I just would echo that encouragement across your audience. Today would be a great day to give your very best gift and continue to champion and support this important ministry.
1-800-347-5151, Anchored to Truth. Going to hear from Jana Weidler in just a minute, but we'd love to hear from you, and we'll be right back.
Point of View, keeping you anchored to truth.
I just hold you in such admiration, the way you tackle such topics that are intimidating to most of us, and yet you masterfully manage them from a biblical worldview, and you equip us to know how to process and think and filter much of the events that are happening today. So on behalf of the hundreds of millions of us, thank you so much.
Point of View, anchored to truth.
Nice comments from our good friend Max Lucado, and he was in studio, and certainly next time he's in studio, I know somebody's going to be here, and that's Jana Weidler. She certainly has wanted to come down from Colorado, where she is located, Vice President of Stewardship. And Jana, you've been listening to the program. What would you like to share with our listeners today?
Well, of course, I've been listening to the program. I do every day, Monday through Friday. One of the things that I'd like to say is I'd like to give a shout out to a handful of people that I've been answering phones along with a lot of our volunteers and our staff. We had a guy named Jerry from Farmington, New Mexico, who was on his bike, and he apologized for being winded, but he wanted to call in and join our Truth Team. He was already a donor, but he joined our Truth Team, which is so exciting. We had Karen from Kingman, Arizona, who is already on the Truth Team, but she doubled her monthly gift. And we are, again, so excited about that. And we have Judy from Harlem, Georgia, who 2 years ago had called in with a small gift. And she said she really wasn't able to give much, but she wanted to give what she could and asked for prayer about something. And within 30 minutes, that prayer was answered. And she called back and gave us a very generous gift. So I love how the Lord is moving. I want to encourage everybody, if you have listened to Point of View, you've received the booklets, you've gotten the Outlook magazine, please listen to your heart. If the Lord has put on your heart to give, please stop what you're doing and give right now. We really, really depend on your support to stay on the radio.
Colin, that makes a very good case for the fact that you don't have to be sitting there quietly at your office and looking at the computer with your calendar out and then make the phone call. We've had some individuals that have been moved by the Holy Spirit and spontaneously gave right then.
Well, and that's what I would encourage anybody to do who's listening right now. You heard what Jana had to share. Just pray. Ask the Lord, what would you have me do? I listen, Lord, to this program regularly. It benefits me and my family. What would you have me do? And then just listen and then be obedient. That's the most important thing. Be obedient. Call and give. Many of you have been doing that. Nancy in California, thank you for your gift. Charlotte in California. Alan in South Carolina with a $1,000 gift. Thank you for that. Wayne in California. Anita in Ohio. And Kathleen in Missouri. All of those just came in the last couple of minutes. Again, time is running out. About 10 minutes left in this hour. We've got the rest of the evening and then tomorrow, and that's it. It's Truth Team Week, and it's going to fly by. So 800-347-5151. pointofview.net. And again, I love hearing some of these stories of people who already were giving and have increased their giving or have added an extra gift. Someone called back and doubled their gift. Any of those scenarios might work in your own situation. We're not telling you how much to give. We're just giving you suggestions. And of course, we have thank you gifts at all different sizes that you can see on the website at pointofview.net. Again, call right now with your best gift, 800-347-5151.
Jana, let me come back to you for just a minute because you talked about praying with these individuals, and that is a very significant aspect of your ministry, and I wanted to say thank you for doing that. But if people have prayer requests, again, they can contact you, can't they?
They sure can, and I love it when I hear from somebody that I have just spent a few minutes on the phone with, and they call back 3 months later and say, this is the status I wanted to share with you, or I need more prayer, or my prayer was answered, and how wonderful that is for me. It's so encouraging for me, but I also get to share it with our staff when prayers are answered. So it is just such an important part of what I do, and I'm privileged to do it. So please call me directly if you have a prayer request.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as you call and give your gift, let the person who answers the phone know what your prayer request is. I know this team would love to pray for your needs. So as you call and you give your gift, just say, hey, and could you pray for this or that? They would love to take care of that as well. 800-347-5151, pointofview.net.
Let me give you an overview of tomorrow. We're going to certainly be talking with our good friend, Dr. Merrill Matthews, and we'll have a couple of his articles. Jeff Mateer has been with First Liberty, but he's just been in Washington, D.C., spent some time with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who, of course, used to be actually on the staff at one time of First Liberty Institute. That's how connected we are to some of these individuals. Again, sharing some behind the scenes, as we already heard today from Lathan Watts, about some of the victories about debanking and corporate wokeness. These are the kinds of things you listen to on a regular basis at Point of View. We try to cover some stories stories that you maybe have heard about from a biblical point of view. We also try to cover some stories you probably will hear nowhere else but right here.
I'm a news junkie, and I still find that you offer a lot of stories that I haven't heard of or have not at least gotten the right information about or enough information about. And again, not only do you cover it on the program, but then you provide the resources on your website so that people can themselves read the story and know exactly what you've been talking about and how to follow up. So we're grateful for the accurate news, the trustworthy information, and most important, the biblical perspective anchored to God's Word with all the different topics that you cover. Would you help us? Would you help us in these final moments of this hour? Let's fill up the phones. Let's get the internet going. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
I was going to talk about the zombie programs, but we'll do that tomorrow. You might say, what is that? Over 1,500 different agencies or programs that were initially begun in the government but are supposed to be reauthorized that are not. And these zombie programs are significant. You mentioned earlier FCC. When the Federal Communications Commission was started, $339 million a year. Now, this last year, $28 billion. So some of these just get bigger and bigger. Now, we certainly need an FCC, but Legal Services Corporation, some of these other zombie programs maybe you've never heard of. Wonder why there is such a pushback on the issue of DOGE and Department of Government Efficiency. So we will cover that tomorrow, especially since Dr. Merrill Matthews has written a book that gets into some of those issues. But just before we go off the air, let me just mention that we will still take those phone calls. I see some people on the phone and some people looking at their phones, and I don't really need anybody looking at their phones as we wind down for today.
And as we talked about even quite a bit today, it's wonderful to know that Point of View is not only interested in helping you where you are today, but with items like the Millennial Roundtable and the Know Why podcast, they're trying to reach out to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation, and you can help that continue through your giving at 800-347-5151. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Don't wait for tomorrow, because tomorrow's going to be busy. We need to hear from you right now. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
We had a chance today to hear from Chuck Bentley saying, we support the organization. I'm going to be in an event tonight that's going to have Lee Strobel. He supported the organization. Of course, we heard Gary Bauer saying, I just couldn't do it without you. And so these are individuals that have lended their voice to Point of View, and can you lend your voice to us as well? Just as we're going off the air, that number again is 800-347-5151. Of course, all the time, 24/7, you can go to the website, pointofview.net. You'll see a banner that says Anchored to Truth. Just click on that button that says Join Now, and we certainly look forward to hearing from you, even as we go off the air. Most importantly, Colin, I want to thank you. We've been thanking people all day, but thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And most importantly, I want to thank, of course, Megan Kitchen, as well as Steve Miller, and all the other people behind the scenes been taking those phone calls. It is going to be a busy day tomorrow, and I hope you'll join us then right here on Point of View.
So, have you joined Point of View's Truth Team yet? There is only one day left for your generosity to have the biggest impact. This week, our goal is to raise $150,000, but we need to meet that deadline by tomorrow. When you join the Truth Team, you'll help people hear and build a biblical worldview. That means that when culture shifts and political tides change, they can stay anchored to God's truth. Your support means more Americans become equipped to live out their faith, becoming a light that leads others back to God. For over 50 years, Point of View has helped Americans restore biblical values in their lives and in their communities. Help future generations stay anchored to truth. Join the Truth Team right now before it's too late. You can join at pointofview.net or by calling 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.